Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crying Inside, where every family story is told with all the emotions and honesty. This is a safe space for us to share stories about family bonds, the pains that sometimes go unseen, and the moments that make our hearts beat the strongest. If this is your first time here, please hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week we bring you family stories that touch the soul, stories not just to hear, but to feel and reflect on. Today, I want to invite you into a special story. A seemingly ordinary party, filled with laughter and warm wishes, but just one sentence changed everything. The atmosphere suddenly dropped. All eyes turned to one corner of the table, and from that moment, a family's fate took a completely different path. If you've ever been at a party where just one sentence made your heart tremble or turned your life upside down, you'll deeply understand today's story. This isn't just a family story, but a journey of courage, protection, and a decision that changes everything. The cheerful music from a small band played in the corner, mixing with the delicious smell of lechon, and it seemed my father-in-law's 70th birthday party in Quezon City would go perfectly. More than 20 relatives gathered around a long table, glasses clinking, laughter mingling with warm wishes. Isabella, was pouring more juice into my father-in-law's glass when Miguel's voice sounded, soft but clear enough for the whole table to hear. "You think you're a contributing member of the family too? I thought you just stayed at home." I froze. In an instant, the chatter and laughter around the table seemed swallowed up. Only the sound of a glass setting down on the table was heard, harsh and dry in the silent room. I lowered my head, trying to swallow the burning lump in my throat, but every eye was on me, some pitiful, others just waiting for the drama to unfold. Suddenly, the chair next to me shifted. Raphael, my son, just 12 years old, stood up straight. His voice was clear, each word like an arrow. "Tatay, I think even Santo Niño wouldn't want to hear that." The room fell silent. A few people coughed. Some chairs slightly moved. I saw Miguel stiffen, his eyes darting quickly as if searching for an excuse. As for me, I'm sure this moment will open a story that no one in this room can ever forget. I'm Isabella, 36 years old, living in a small apartment in Makati. I work as an online English teacher for students from various countries. The income isn't high, but it's enough for me to support myself and contribute a little to the family. I never look down on this job because it's my pride. It helps me hold on to the feeling that I still matter. My husband Miguel, 39 years old, works as a manager for a big logistics company in Pasay. To the outside world, he's the kind of man everyone praises. Polite, neatly dressed, always smiling at the right moment, and saying things that make others feel comfortable. At church masses, barangay fiestas, or family parties, Miguel is always the one holding the microphone, giving speeches, thanking people, making everyone believe he's the perfect pillar of the family. My husband's family lives in a neighborhood not far away, just about a 20-minute jeepney ride. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Teresa, is a strong woman who values the family's honor very much. To her, utang na loob, a debt of gratitude, is unbreakable. She often reminds me that, since my husband's family opened their doors to me, I must be grateful and show obedience in everything. This makes it hard for me to push back, even when I have to hear unpleasant remarks. In Filipino culture, especially in traditional families, a wife's silence is often seen as a virtue. But long silence turns into an invisible shackle, and I've worn it for many years. Raphael, our only son, is 12 years old this year, in 6th grade at a nearby public school. He's a smart, sensitive boy who rarely shows strong emotions, but I've noticed sometimes during dinner or at Grandma's house, his eyes linger on me longer than usual, as if he's reading a different story behind his mother's smile. One time, while we were folding clothes together, Raphael quietly asked, "Nene, why do you never say anything when Tatay says things that make you sad?" I just smiled and said I was okay. But inside, I knew my silence didn't just affect me. It planted the idea in my child's mind that enduring was normal, and I had no idea that this realization from him would change everything. My marriage was like a house painted pure white on the outside, but inside, cracks had already started to form. They didn't appear right away, but slowly formed through everyday moments outsiders would overlook, But for me, they were shards of broken glass that, when stepped on again and again, would bleed. Every Sunday morning, my husband's family had a fixed routine, attending Mass together at San Pedro Church. This church is right in the center of the barangay, with old red tiles, and inside there's always the scent of incense mixed with aged wood. After the service, everyone wouldn't rush home, but would stop by Teresa's house, my mother-in-law's, to have a late lunch together. That meal always had pancit bihon, lumpia, and a hot pot of arroz caldo, served with freshly squeezed calamansi. To outsiders, it looked like a warm family story. But for me, those were often moments when I had to brace myself and endure. Miguel, my husband, had a habit he called joking around, but really it was just teasing remarks. For example, one day when I brought Baiko, I made myself, he said, "Isabella can cook, if you don't count the times she forgets the salt." He said it right in the middle of a happy conversation at the table. Everyone laughed, and a few nodded, like they agreed. I laughed too, but it was the kind of laugh my mother taught me to hide my embarrassment. This wasn't the first time. Another time, when Teresa asked me about my online English teaching job, I was about to explain when Miguel interrupted. "Her job is always free time, just teaching some students somewhere abroad." He said it like my work was just a hobby, not something real or valuable. I knew in a family story like this, reacting too strongly would be seen as disrespecting my husband, as losing face for the family. And in the Filipino culture of utang na loob, I had to remember I owed them because I was accepted as a daughter-in-law. During barangay fiesta celebrations, the livelier the atmosphere, the greater the pressure. I often had to skip classes I had already scheduled just to help with preparations. My mother-in-law once said bluntly, "Isabella, a good wife must know how to prioritize her husband's family. Your work can always wait, but the fiesta only happens once." I smiled, nodded, and put my phone down, even though I wanted to keep studying with my longtime student from Japan. Bit by bit, those polite words and looks slowly wore me down. But there was someone else quietly paying attention. That was Rafael, my son. Rafael is a quiet boy, always polite to grandparents and relatives. He rarely interrupts adult conversations, but I noticed that whenever Miguel criticized me or my mother-in-law lectured me, his eyes would briefly frown. He usually sits quietly, but those eyes seem to remember everything, every word, every tone, every smirk. I recall a family meeting at the end of the month where they discussed contributions for the church festival and fixing misses. Teresa's roof, Miguel said to everyone. If Isabella would listen to me more, things would go more smoothly. It sounded like mild advice, but I knew he meant that all the problems were because I was unreasonable. I stayed silent, but saw Rafael put down his spoon, looking at me longer than usual. Another evening, while we were eating, I told Miguel I wanted to visit my mother in Batangas. She had back pain and lived alone. Miguel refused, speaking firmly. "We have more important things to do. If you go, who will take care of my nene?" I was silent as always, but this time was different. Rafael was sitting nearby at the study table, his phone face down, and I didn't notice the recording light blinking on the device. The following week, I noticed Rafael starting to ask strange questions. "Nene, why don't you ever speak up? If someone says something that makes you sad, do you have the right to say what you think?" I just stroked his head, saying, "It's okay, I'm fine." But inside, I felt uneasy. Rafael didn't ask again, but his eyes said he hadn't forgotten. And I never expected that my silence would become the reason he started something he believed would protect me. That night, when I went into his room to turn off the light, I saw his phone open to the recording app on the table. The newest file was titled, "For Nene." Before I could listen, I heard Miguel's footsteps in the hallway, so I quickly turned off the screen and stepped out. I didn't know that just a few weeks later, that recording would become the center of a party and also the moment that marked the biggest turning point in this family story. That night, when Miguel was fast asleep, Rafael gently knocked on my door. He didn't say anything at first, just placed the phone on the table and played a recording. In the quiet room, Miguel's voice was clear. "Your online work means nothing. What really matters here is this family and what I say. If you don't listen, you better reconsider where you stand." I felt like someone just sucked all the air out of the room. My heart pounded, and my hand gripped the edge of my robe tightly. That was Miguel's voice, cold and controlling, but hearing it with my own ears, I realized it was even more cruel than I had thought. "Nene," Raphael spoke up, his voice firm but with a slight tremble. "I recorded it because I don't want you to stay silent anymore. You deserve to be respected." I didn't know how to respond. My mind was filled with fears. If Miguel found out, how angry would he get? How would my in-laws see me? And above all, would this tear our family apart? Raphael looked straight into my eyes, as if to reassure me. I talked to Uncle Ramon. I froze. Ramon is my mother's younger brother, a lawyer in Davao. Even though he lives far away, he often calls to check on the two of us. Raphael said he sent the recording to Uncle and asked about my rights. "Uncle said you don't have to endure being disrespected or controlled," Raphael explained. "But he also said everything needs to be handled carefully so no one can blame you." I was speechless. Part of me wanted him to delete the recording immediately to avoid trouble, but another part, the part that has suffered in silence for so many years, felt like a small light had just flickered. Raphael continued, "Uncle thinks the best way is for everyone to hear the truth, not to make noise, but so they can see what you've had to endure." I swallowed hard. "You plan to? When?" "At Grandpa's birthday party next week," Raphael answered, his eyes shining. "The whole family will be there. That's when no one could ignore it." I was confused, scared, but also felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, this time, I wouldn't have to face it alone. The atmosphere at Lolo Antonio's 70th birthday party in Quezon City was lively. The backyard was decorated with colorful string lights and balloons printed with, "Happy Birthday, Lolo." Cheerful music played from the speakers, mixing with the aroma of lechon, hot pancit canton, and cold halo laid out on the long table. More than 20 relatives were present, laughter and chatter blending with the clinking of plates and glasses. Isabella, tried to smile and make small talk, but inside I felt my breath shortening. I knew today would be different from any party before. Miguel was standing by the table, holding a beer, smiling with some cousins. He had no idea every moment today was planned. The meal went on as usual until everyone gathered to raise their glasses in a toast. Just as I poured more juice for my father-in-law, Miguel suddenly turned, smirked, and said, "You think you're a contributing member of the family? I thought you just stayed at home." The chatter stopped completely. Only the sound of glasses setting down on the table was clearly heard. I felt my face flush. Before, I would have lowered my head and stayed silent. But today, things were different. Raphael put down his spoon and stood up straight. His voice was clear and stronger than his 12 years. "Tate, I think even Santo Niño wouldn't want to hear that." A murmur spread around the table. Miguel frowned. "What did you say?" Raphael didn't answer immediately. He took his phone from his pocket, pressed a few buttons, and a recording played in the silent room. "Your online work is nothing. If you don't listen, you better check your place in this family." People looked at each other, some wide-eyed, others covering their mouths. Miguel quickly stepped forward, reaching to grab the phone, but Raphael stepped back firmly. "That's not the words of a husband who respects his wife, Tate." Miguel's face changed. He forced a smile. "It's a private matter you don't understand." A deep voice came from the doorway. "I understand very well." The whole room turned around. Uncle Ramon walked in, holding a stack of papers in his hand. He wore a white shirt and a blue tie, his eyes calm but determined. "I am Isabella's younger brother," Ramon introduced himself, even though many already knew. "I'm also a lawyer, and I'm here today not to ruin the party, but to defend my niece's right to be respected." Teresa, the mother-in-law, stood up sharply. "Ramon, this is our family matter. No one invited you to interfere." Ramon looked straight at her. "Sister Teresa, yes, this is a family matter, but this family story should have been resolved peacefully. But when respect is repeatedly trampled on, and a child has to gather evidence to protect her mother, then it's no longer just a private matter." Miguel growled, "Are you accusing me of abuse?" "I have never hit her." Ramon placed the papers on the table. "Abuse isn't just physical. Insulting words, humiliating her in front of others, controlling her life. All of these are recognized by Philippine law as emotional abuse. Article 26 of the Civil Code clearly states, "Any actions that harm another person's honor and dignity are prohibited." The atmosphere grew so tense, you could hear the ceiling fan spinning. Miguel looked around, as if seeking support, but many avoided his gaze. Raphael pressed play on the second recording, a conversation at home about me wanting to visit my birth mother. "We have more important things to deal with. If you go, who will take care of my mother?" This time, the whispering grew louder. A cousin shook his head softly. "Miguel, that's unfair." Teresa stepped forward, her voice sharp. "It's all just a misunderstanding. Isabella still lives well. We never mistreated her." I took a deep breath. For the first time in many years, I raised my voice in front of the whole family. I never said the family mistreated me, Nene. But I want to be treated like a wife who has a voice, not someone who always has to stay silent. Miguel tried to interrupt, but a voice from the far end of the table spoke up. "I've witnessed it." Everyone turned around. It was 8 lords, Miguel's cousin, who rarely got involved in family matters. She stood up, speaking clearly. "I've seen and heard many times Miguel say things to Isabella he shouldn't have. It wasn't just joking, it was belittling." A few others started nodding and whispering to each other. A wave of silent support began to spread. Ramon continued. "Today, no one is asking for punishment. We only ask for acknowledgement and a commitment to change. Because this isn't just Isabella's right, but a lesson for Raphael, that respect in marriage is non-negotiable." Miguel lowered his head. His eyes shifted between anger and shame. The room waited in silence. Raphael stepped forward, placing his phone on the table. "Dad, I don't want our family to fall apart, but I also don't want Mom to suffer anymore. I just want us to start over, with respect." His words echoed in my mind. This was the moment I'd dreamed of, but never dared to believe would come. The moment I was no longer alone. Miguel took a deep breath, then slowly nodded. I'm sorry. I will change." His voice still carried some reluctance, but it was the first time he said those words in front of the whole family. The celebration continued, but the atmosphere was completely different. Laughter returned, but this time, no one joked about me. Raphael sat beside me, his small hand gripping mine tightly, as if to remind me, Mom doesn't have to stay silent anymore. After everyone had settled down, Miguel remained silent for a long moment. The beer glass in front of him was nearly full, his hand rotating the rim as if weighing something. Finally, he looked up, his gaze meeting mine before glancing past Raphael. I'm sorry," Miguel said, his voice dropping. "I will try to change, but..." I waited, my heart tightening. That "but" sounded like a door slightly opened, only to slam shut again. "But you also have to promise not to disgrace the family anymore. We deal with private matters within the home. Don't bring them up in front of others, especially in front of relatives," Miguel said, trying to sound gentle, but I clearly heard the condition behind his words. The whole room fell completely silent. I felt the eyes on me, some filled with sympathy, some waiting for an answer, and others carrying a warning. In the culture of many Filipino families, saving face is so important that sometimes it hides the truth. I looked down at the table, my fingers unconsciously tracing a scratch on the wood surface. If I agree with Miguel, it means I accept going back to that old silence again. It means all of Raphael's efforts, and Uncle Ramon's today, will end right here. But if I refuse, I don't know what will happen. I might lose this home. Raphael gently placed his hand on my arm. His voice was small but clear enough for the whole table to hear. "Mom, we deserve respect. Not just when we're alone, but everywhere." I looked up at him. In Raphael's eyes, I saw a reflection of myself years ago, a girl who dreamed of marriage as a safe place, not somewhere to watch every word she said. And now, my 2-year-old son was reminding me that my worth doesn't depend on protecting anyone else's pride. Miguel frowned slightly, maybe because my son's words hit something he didn't want to face. Mrs. Teresa was about to speak, but Uncle Ramon gently rested his hand on her shoulder, as if to remind her this was my decision. I took a deep breath, feeling time slow down. In that moment, I remembered everything. The silent dinners, the sarcastic remarks, the times I swallowed my tears just to avoid arguments. In all those times, Raphael looked at me without saying anything, but I knew he saw it all. I lifted my head, speaking slowly but firmly. Miguel, I won't disgrace the family, but I also won't stay silent when I'm disrespected. If we want change, we have to start by accepting that the truth needs to be spoken, no matter where. Miguel stared at me for a long time, then bowed his head. I didn't know if it was acceptance or just a temporary retreat, but this time I knew I had crossed a line I wouldn't go back over. Raphael squeezed my hand gently. In his eyes, I saw pride. And I understood. Whatever decision comes next, whether to stay and fight for change or leave to protect myself, I wouldn't be walking alone anymore. 2 weeks after the birthday party in Quezon City, I packed up my things and Raphael's. There was no argument or crying. I just left a short letter for Miguel. I'm leaving not because I want to break the family, but because I want to keep respect and peace for myself and my son. If you really want to change, the door will always be open. But until then, we need another place to breathe. I found a small apartment in Pasig, just 1 bedroom, a living room combined with a kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the Pasig River. It wasn't fancy, but every morning, sunlight poured through the window, and I felt a relief I had forgotten. Raphael transferred to a nearby public school. He quickly made new friends and surprisingly joined the debate club. When I asked why, Raphael just smiled. I want to learn how to use words to stand up for what's right, like at that party. Every afternoon after school, he'd bring home stories about friends, little competitions at school, and times he dared to challenge an unfair opinion. I realized Raphael was finding his own voice, something I had lost in my marriage. Every Sunday, the two of us went to Mass at the church near our home. Sitting in the incense smoke, hearing the choir echo under the dome, I felt complete peace. No more judging looks, no more fear of sudden sarcasm. Just me, Raphael, and the feeling of truly living as ourselves. Sometimes, I still got messages from Miguel. At first, they were cold questions. How long do you plan to stay there? Then gradually changed to, I want to see him. I agreed but set clear boundaries. Meetings only at cafes or parks, never at the old house. Once, Miguel said, I'm trying to change. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I smiled softly and said, change isn't just a promise, Miguel. It's how you live every day. The new life wasn't perfect. There were still tough financial days, and I still missed the early years of marriage, when everything was full of hope. But I knew leaving that day was the first step for Raphael and me to find respect, from others and from ourselves. One afternoon, while I was watering the little orchids on the balcony, Raphael stood beside me and said, Nene, I think this is really our home. Not because it's big or small, but because here we can laugh without worrying someone will say we're too loud. I hugged him tightly, feeling my heart lift. In the end, I realized that freedom isn't just about leaving a place, but about finding where you can breathe deeply, live authentically, and love without holding back. Every family has its own story. Family stories aren't always picture perfect, and sometimes love or marriage isn't enough to erase wounds caused by disrespect. I used to think silence was the best way to keep the peace, but staying silent too long only makes the pain run deeper. What I've learned from this journey is that respect isn't something you can negotiate. It's the foundation of every relationship, from family and friends to husband and wife. When respect is lost, everything else slowly falls apart, and rebuilding takes courage from both sides. Raphael taught me an important lesson. Sometimes, it's the younger ones who have the courage to speak truths that adults have learned to ignore. I know not everyone can walk away, but everyone deserves to live in a place where they are heard and valued. If you're in a similar situation, remember, change starts with a small step, a word, a choice, a boundary you set for yourself. And once you cross that boundary, you'll find yourself stronger than ever. I want to ask you, if it were you, would you choose silence to keep the peace or stand up to protect your respect? Share your answer in the comments. Your story might just inspire someone else. Thank you for watching this story on Crying Inside. If this is your first time here, Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any heartfelt family stories. Every week, we share real-life emotional stories with lessons that might change how you see love, family, and inner strength.